the Policy Christian is devoted to a big cause for both the church and Western civilization, for their revival, relying on what I call the next generation church evangelism strategy. And in this video, we are going to go to what is the pivotal policy reform required for both. Hello, I'm Michael Saxon, your Policy Christian, and need I remind you yet again that I'm probably the only person on the internet who is talking specifically about what Christians can and should be doing in the public square, both to rebuild the church and to restore Western civilization. And they both have to do, as you'll watch some of my previous videos, on taking a much bolder stance on the two great commands, the Great Commission to go out into all the world and the Great Command to love our neighbour as we love God. Now, in my last Substack Bugle piece, let me say that again, my last Substack piece on my platform, Last Post Bugle, I deal with what re-empowering local communities should look like under Reform number 6. Now remember, the Next Generation Church Evangelism strategy revolves around the 5 core Christian worldview principles and 12 transformational reforms designed to take Western society back to its 5 core principles with through a whole raft of policy changes that would transform the way we do things in Western society, while at the same time bringing down, you'll recall, the two giants. So the aim is to bring those two down, fascist liberalism and feudal corporatism, at the same time as we restore the civilization and create far more opportunities for evangelism, hence rebuilding the church. Now, what I'm proposing to do today is to go to that Reform number 6 that I focused on in Last Post Bugle on Substack, and just talk briefly about it, because I'm going to go into all the aspects of this particular reform later. Now, I'll put up a screenshot of both the 5 core principles and the 12 reforms, and I've highlighted there Reform number 6, which I think from memory is called re-empowering local communities. I also like to refer to it under the idea of regionalisation. Interestingly, the latest Prime Minister in the UK is talking about a similar thing called regionalisation, but his version of that is a lot different from the Christian politics version that I'm into. So let's just talk quickly about what goes into this reform. In fact, if you look at the 12 reforms, all but probably 3 to 4 of them actually get folded into Reform number 6. It's the sort of overarching reform into which everything else fits. And you have to have Reform number 6, regionalisation, if you're going to go anywhere near Reform number 5, which is about reducing the size of government to something less than 20% of GDP. At the moment, it generally ranges in the 40 to 50% range. So a significant reduction in the size of government. That means you've got to get taxes right down or change the whole taxation system. You've got to get the systems of administration through central government reduced and devolved out to the regional level. We've got to look at the whole system of justice. We've got to talk about finance, credit creation, loans and all that sort of thing, building in order to build local economies based on high levels of what's called social capital or trust. So I won't go any further into that, other than to just talk briefly now about a number of areas. That includes governance, tax and credit creation, education, health, welfare and justice. All of those have to devolve away from the control of central government if we're to reduce the size of government. The first is governance. Now you'll recall, if you've followed this channel, that the first of the 12 reforms is about going to the Swiss system of direct democracy, where referenda is used and the people are real citizens because they have real control through referenda over what their government does. So by instituting a system of direct democracy like that, the Swiss system, it's possible to devolve it down to the regional level, which is what the Swiss do, in order to be able to control things at the local level through systems of referenda at that level. Next, and then we've got to look at how we devolve government in more specific terms relating to regional government and down to the local level itself, which I like to think of in terms of parishes or wards. So we're really getting right back to really local government and local economies, local systems, local communities, dare I say it, and where, of course, the church with the building and the steeple was at the centre for much of Western history. Let's go to tax and credit creation. The reforms call for the removal of income tax and the creation of a sales tax, which sounds overly, well, it is an overly simplified view, but we have to get to a tax system which gets away from income tax in order to encourage local businesses, small businesses in particular, which of course is going to be ideally suited to local economies. The next is credit creation. We move under one of the other reforms to creating an independent, non-government, non-bank controlled system of credit creation, which does not rely on the use of interest-bearing debt. In other words, credit is given to people for mortgages and for loans for business creation, business startup, business expansion, without with an administration charge, but certainly without interest, or what the Bible calls usury. If you know your Bible, you will know that God is totally against usury. Nehemiah in Nehemiah 5 says that even 1% interest is too much. Next, education. Education would be taken out of the hands of a central education department and placed in the hands of local communities, with far greater emphasis on homeschooling or charter-style schools, with a percentage of the sales tax devoted to subsidising much of that education. Local communities would make decisions for themselves through the wards or regions on the educational curriculum. Health. This is a major area because it's afflicting, ill health is afflicting many of us today, and most of it's preventable, and that's where health could focus at the regional level on prevention rather than dealing with ill health via medications. So if we can prevent all of that to a large, not all of it, of course, but we can prevent at least 30% of it through good health. I'm a perfect example. Looking at me, 72 years old, I've adopted in the last few years a keto-style health regime, which has led me to losing 9 kilograms in weight, and I feel far more energetic, far more alive, and I'm looking forward to my older age rather than fearing it. Welfare. Welfare has to be reduced. When it's reduced to the local level, has to go to whole different areas than we're doing at the moment, where government just throws money at problems. We have to look at what we do with people who need welfare. I advocate they go on a register, that we turn first to altruism at the local level. If people know how many people in their area need welfare, what that's going to cost, they can make voluntary contributions, which then can result in some sort of change to their sales tax levels. And we move forward with a whole range of other approaches to dealing with people in need rather than the current system. And then we have justice. Now, I put a heavy emphasis on moving to equity law rather than what's called positive or legislative law, and the whole edifice of the current court system, which I'm calling the old court system. Under the systems I'm talking about at local level, we would move to a people's court system, which, as I said, relies on local courts not with justices, but with trained people able to deal with specific areas across a whole range of areas. This would also mean that we could do away with much that is now government-controlled regulation. We've got to do away with most of that, and the quangos. That goes back to the governance issue before them. Hundreds, apparently, of quangos that have taken sovereignty away from Parliament. So that covers basically the areas that I want to cover in videos to come. So keep an eye on this channel as we get more into these whole areas, which as you get into them, you realize that the 12 reforms just open up a whole realm of possibilities for redesigning the way we do society in far more effective ways, and in ways where ordinary people, the citizens of the country, have real control over their own lives, and not some God in situ state that the Christian community have tended to turn to unbiblically, as I point out in other videos. For the last 40 years, we've been, again, speaking to my other videos, we have been in a wilderness, the church has, of its own making. So that's a quick video to be followed up with other videos on these specific areas. So stay with me. I'm Michael Saxon, your Policy Christian, and I'll see you again next time.